welcome to the Business Viewpoint magazine. Today, we are delighted to feature an accomplished academician and educator who's contributing to the advancement of higher education through a dedication to teaching, research, and academic excellence. As a visiting assistant professor at Punjabi University, Dr. Rini Singh has committed to nurturing young minds, promoting knowledge driven learning, and supporting the development of future ready education. Her work reflects a passion for academic innovation, intellectual growth, and empowering students to excel in an ever evolving world. Please join me in welcoming one of the most visionary educators advancing academic excellence in 2026, Dr. Rini Singh. Dr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on this show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, it's a great opportunity to connect with you people and share my views. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
The pleasure is all ours. So let's get started, Dr. Singh. To begin with, could you take us through your professional journey and also what inspired you to pursue a career in higher education?
Yeah. So, when I reflect on my professional journey, it spans around 11 years, and there's not a sequence of career transitions, but it's an evolution of a singular purpose. So, what I say, it's about exploring my knowledge about technology, about human potential, and then collectively creating a lasting societal value. And my experience has been across industry, research, consulting, and higher education, and it has shaped a philosophy rather that seeks to bridge that scholarship with practice. And to tell you about my professional growth, I began my career with Vodafone India, and that was during a pivotal phase of the country's digital transformation and working on the voice and the data solutions, customer analytics, and strategic business alternatives and initiatives. Then I switched to Tata Teleservices, where I was taking care of the revenue management and expanded the product innovation team, and then a lot of market development, which I did in, and then in reinforcing a conviction, and the technology that creates value not only when it's addressed meaningfully, but rather, when human needs through innovation and collaborative leadership. Uh, while I was in industry, I demonstrated one very critical fact that what works, research compelled me to ask why it works. So, how it's impacted and it can extend beyond the commercial success was my keen area to explore. And this intellectual curiosity led me to pursue my PhD in marketing management, and where my research was to examine the adoption of Internet of Things services, IoT, you must be knowing this term, and that its role in shaping the digital economy. So my decision to embrace academia was equally influenced by my upbringing, because I am the daughter of an educator, and I learned that teaching is not merely about imparting knowledge. It's more about cultivating that curiosity, that confidence, that character in one. So that I learned from my mother. And today, through my roles in Punjab University, in Narsimhanji Institute of Management Sciences, Chandigarh campus, and many other international collaborations, I have complemented by consulting into artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, digital transformation, where I try to strive that bridge between that academia and the industry while preparing the students, so that they become more thoughtful, more inquisitive about the things, and they are future ready leaders. That's very, very important in this technology driven world. Yeah. Thank you.
I think that was a very comprehensive answer and very, very well explained as well. So this brings me to the second question. Education has undergone, significant transformation in recent years. Like right now, you touched on AI and everything, right? So what inspired your vision for promoting academic excellence and student-centric learning?
Honestly, if I talk about my childhood, historically, we saw education rewarding the acquisition and reproduction of information, cramming system. How much you know, the better you score, and the better is your percentage, and the better is your possibility to fetch into a job. But today, the scenarios are different. Everything is readily available on generative AI platforms. So here, it's more about about, gaining that competitive advantage, not just by possessing the knowledge, but it is by interpreting it more critically, more analytically and ethically, and then creating something that's original in its own form. That's one. And this transformation in the education scenario inspired me to rethink both for teaching also and for learning also in both perspectives. So I firmly believe, that academic excellence, it should no longer be measured by the examination scores alone, but by the student's ability to analyze the complexity, solve the unfamiliar problems which they probably can use their intellect into, that the concept clarity that they have now, when they implement it into the unfamiliar problems, they come up with a certain innovation in their thought process, and they create solutions which are not just helpful for a particular moment but for a societal impact. And yes, this definitely is backed up by certain very renowned reports, like we talk about the World Economic Forum's future of jobs report 2025. It identifies couple of 5 important factors. First is your analytical thinking, creativity, resilience, technological literacy, and many more, as the future of employability. So gone are the days where we thought that knowledge accumulation is sufficient to fetch us a job. These days, knowledge is readily available on all AI platforms. Now is a scenario where we are trying to fetch out the skills where people can analytically, figure out and interpret the data and give us something which we are not so much aware about. Rather, it's more of data interpretation, analytics, that's going to pay off in the times to come. And these developments, they reinforce my conviction that universities, they must shift from the knowledge transmission to the capability development. That's the next big thing, next digital revolution that I see around in the universities and the teaching scenario. Also, for me, the student centered learning, it's not purely a simply a pedagogical method. Rather, it's all about a mindset. Why I call it mindset? Because this recognizes every learner as an active participant, constructing knowledge, rather than just, passive recipient of information. Because even if you're sitting for a conversation, you should be inquisitive to know if somebody is talking about a topic, rather than just being a mute recipient to the information. If you're inquisitive, that's one of the skills that we are trying to inculcate in our today's generation, which is highly dependent on AI for everything. And so I try to do this consistently by collaborating my theory classes with the, industrial visits, live consulting assignments, and taking students to different, probably that could be a showroom visit or a technology, organization visit, where they are engaging with the emerging technology, and at the same time they are trying to figure out the empirical research. And the main objective that remains the same, that is to ensure that learning is more reflective, it's more contextual, and it is deeply connected to the real world challenges, rather than just being a theory expert. I want my students to see the other side of the story where it's practically being done. So that's from my side. Thank you.
That's excellent. So, you've had a very long-standing journey. So, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you faced throughout your academic journey, and also how did you overcome them?
Okay, now this is a tough one because this already have this word challenge. So, being into corporate world where I knew the things were quite easy, we had certain targets to do, and things were very sorted. They were very much in place. But in teaching, or when you go into the research side, things are really different, where you have to be knowing new things every day. You have to update yourself. Rather, I would say that corporate success is frequently evaluated through your measurable outcomes, like your revenue growth. One, you're done. Your customer acquisition target, it's done. Then your operational efficiency is there, you are sorted. But when I talk about the academic part here, the temperament is different. You need to be more patient. You need to be more, intellectually bent towards the search. You need to have a methodological rigor about whatever you're doing, and then the willingness to question one's assumption. Rather, something that I have only assumed, I'm going to question myself whether this assumption is right or not. So here, this transition that has happened between the two worlds required me, corporate world to the academic world. This required me to develop some new ways of thinking while retaining the practical insights that I had gained during my corporate world. And another very important challenge here was to stay connected and to stay updated with the extraordinary pace of the technological change that is happening. Because today we were day before yesterday we were trying to excel on chat gpt. Today everybody wants to know cloud. Today everybody wants to expertise on perplexity. So that's how this change is happening so fast. And to be more relevant in academia, you have to be updated. So that's definitely one challenge where I need to stay updated. I need to tell my students about the latest things that are happening. So that keeps me on my toes most of the time. Yeah, thank you.
That's fantastic. So, as an educator and even as a leader, what are some of the guiding principles or core principles that have really helped you create meaningful learning experiences for your students?
So, my teaching philosophy had been very simple in a sense that education, it should transform the way students they think rather than merely expanding their knowledge or what do they know. They should learn to think out of box. They should learn to uh, create a concept which has yet not been talked about, and that comes when we give them freedom, of course, and we give them a right direction. That's very important. Rather than putting them in this framework of measure of marks that they get in the class, if we give them something that's more experiential, that's more to do with research, that's where their creativity comes out. That's where the innovation takes birth. So modern education psychology increasingly supports this constructive approaches, and where knowledge it is actively constructed through experience. We all know that reflection and application. So this goes hand in hand. And I have therefore consciously moved beyond this conventional lecture based pedagogy to towards creating more immersive learning environments, which is certainly encouraging more of inquiry, more of experimentation, more of critical engagement amongst my students. Like, just to put you through the live example on this, what I did was I was teaching a subject that's called product and brand management. So what I did, I designed an experiential learning activity where I took my students to this retail environment, that's the store of the Collective right in Chandigarh. And so they could understand how the pricing architecture is done, how the brand positioning is done, how the merchandising strategies are done. So that's where they could actually relate to what they were studying in theory in a real sense, practically. On the similar lines, there was another cohort where I was teaching human computer interaction and system analysis and design. So there I planned their industrial visit to one of the India's number one AIoT company, that is Buildtrack. So where they could actually see and experience and practically do in itself the entire smart building ecosystem, and they could see what is the concept of digital twin and how it has been practically used in the world today. And rather not just digital twin, the building management system, the smart sensors and all those things. So that's where the sustainable engineering solutions and many other things, what they had just studied till now, they could practically see how they are being implemented by the organizations, by the companies, by the enterprises. So that's the real outlook that I want my students to have rather than just a theory now knowledge. Right. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, you've just answered, in the next question that I'm going to ask you, you've just answered right now, but I'll still go ahead and ask you. How do you balance teaching, research, mentorship, and continuous learning while maintaining academic excellence?
Honestly, for me, these three things are not different at all. They are complementing each other, and they maintain a balance. If I'm doing a research, if I'm doing research, that's going to help me in my teaching. And when I'm teaching, that's going to help me in my mentorship. So it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that was great. So let's move on to the next question. In your opinion, how is technology changing higher education, and also how can educators effectively adapt to these changes?
Okay, so what I feel that technology, it is redefining the higher education by shifting the focus from access to information to ability to interpret it, apply it, and rather create knowledge about it. And with artificial intelligence, we've democratized the learning, and rather it has elevated the importance of critical thinking, ethical judgment, and rather human discernment in totality. If I talk about UNESCO's rightly advocated statement, it says that AI, it should augment, but it should not replace human intelligence. So consequently, we as educators, we have this role of evolving from knowledge provider to a mentor and facilitator of a higher order learning. And through the industry immersions, experimental projects, and I strongly believe that this is going to encourage my students to experience the technologies like AI, Internet of Things in the real world context, and rather this is going to reflect on their ethical and societal implications as well. Ultimately, there's one thing that I'd like to highlight here, that universities, they must cultivate this what technology cannot replicate, that is curiosity amongst the students, the creativity, empathy, which is very very important, and these days we see a lot of it missing from the students, and interdisciplinary thinking. Along with that, responsible leadership. We talk about entrepreneurship, but at the same time there is a parallel concept of responsible leadership that needs to be inculcated in today's Gen Z, and ensuring that innovation, it serves the humanity rather than the other way around. So that's my take on it.
That's fabulous. Yeah, so like just to elaborate more on this question, how important is innovation and interdisciplinary learning in preparing students for the future?
See, innovation, it has always driven the societal progress. There's no second question to this. But, in today's complex challenges, which range from climate change to cybersecurity to sustainable development to digital inclusion, one can no longer address this within this so-called framework of disciplinary silos. What we want to look at is, this requires further collaboration. Now, when I say collaboration, it has to be across technologies, across management, across policies, behavior sciences, and rather ethics as well. Very important and very critical segment here. Now, reflecting on this reality, if you talk about WEF, World Economic Forum, it also mentioned, there are certain key skills, which I also said in my previous question, that there are certain key skills that they look up for the job employability. And they say that in complement to this, your education policy 2020 NEP, it also advocates multidisciplinary as well as experiential learning. So my teaching philosophy is definitely going to embrace this convergence. I'm doing that and keep doing that. Whether discussing about AI or IoT or marketing or information systems, I always encourage my students to explore the intersection of technology with consumer behavior, with sustainability, with various business policies, public policies, organizational leadership. So through these industry immersions and real world projects, my students, they experience how the innovation, it extends beyond the technological advancement for solving their meaningful human problems. Yeah.
That's superb. So, if you could share with us a memorable experience, maybe like a research project or a teaching moment that really taught you an important lessons about leadership, resilience, and lifelong learning, what would it be?
No, very recently, this was a very defining moment in my academic journey where I took my students beyond the classroom in, one of the India's number one AIoT company, Buildtrack, and there they got to see the entire AI, that is artificial intelligence enabled smart infrastructure ecosystem, and this experiencing this digital twin technology, intelligent automation, predictive analytics in operations. This transformed their abstract concept learning into tangible reality. And the kind of feedback that I got from my students, trust you me, it was very emotional. And most importantly, this actually transformed the nature of my students' questions, from just understanding how the concept or the technology functions to exploring that how they matter, in today's world, in terms of sustainability, in terms of operational excellence. And that's where I saw that vision of, something which we look at creating in my students, that experiential learning, that something that curiosity comes into their thought process, is what I could see. And that was a very proud moment as a mentor. And I really look forward to create such experiential learning for my students in times to come. Yeah. Thank you.
That's great. So, what role does mentorship play in shaping students' career? And also, how do you strive to inspire the next generation of students?
Honestly, mentorship is central. I mean, when I say central, it is actually like when you talk of a circle and it has a center point. That is what mentorship is all about. In my educational philosophy, this is central because entire careers are shaped not only because of knowledge, but because of guidance, because of encouragement, because of the confidence that you embrace in the uncertainty. So, reflecting on my own journey, believe you me, I recognize the transformative influence, of mentors who actually challenged my thinking. They nurtured the intellectual independence in me, and they also demonstrated that true leadership, it lies in enabling others to grow. So, to me, it extends beyond academic advising, and rather it involves helping my students to discover their strengths, their they exercise their ethical judgment, and then they can develop to be a better human being in totality. So that's what I look up to. Yes.
That's amazing. And even I think mentorship should not be restricted only to academic journey, because in professional journey also you see so many of these legendary leaders having mentors up till to date. So that is really great. So yeah, mentorship is really important, I feel. So this brings me to the last and foremost question. How do you ensure that education remains relevant, inclusive, and capable of addressing the needs of this rapidly changing world?
Um, See, I'll talk from the higher education context because that's my forte, and that's where I teach my bachelor's and master's students. So today, higher education bears a far more responsibility, greater than that, than preparing the students for a single profession, because you have to equip them not just for careers but continuously evolving them. Technology is yet to emerge, they should be knowing it. Societal challenges which are increasing at a complex rate, they need to know how to face it. So in this context, educational relevance, it's going to depend on sustained dialogue between certain different sectors. That is, one is academia, the second one is your industry, then is your government and society. These, rather, I will call them as four pillars, right? And curricula must remain dynamic. That's very important, uh, because as we see technological changes happening, you can't stand by on one curricula. It has to change. And because of the emerging technologies, contemporary research, and public policies, and evolving workforce expectations, so we need to be flexible with this. Then there is another very important thing that I'd like to mention, that equally important is the fostering inclusivity. So, a truly inclusive classroom, it does more than accommodate diversity, and it values diverse perspectives, and it nurtures an environment where the curiosity, respectful debate, and intellectual risk taking flourishes. So, such kind of spaces, they rather cultivate creativity, resilience, and collaborative problem solving. So, as education evolves, I really think beyond a degree centric model, and it should be towards lifelong learning, rather, I would say, and micro credentials, interdisciplinary collaborations, and experiential learning a must, and industry partnerships, which will become increasingly significant in times to come. And that's where the rapid changing world is going to evolve. Thank you.
That's yeah, that sounds very, very promising. So, Dr. Rini, this brings us to the end of the interview. But before we say our goodbyes, I just want to give you a small vote of thanks. So, Dr. Singh, thank you so much for sharing with us your valuable insights and inspiring journey. I think your story reflects how dedication to teaching, research, innovation, and lifelong learning can empower students and contribute to the advancement of society through education. We look forward to witnessing your continued contributions to academic excellence and the positive impact you will create through your work at Punjab University. To all of our viewers, we'll be soon back with more inspiring conversations featuring visionary leaders and change makers right here on the Business Viewpoint magazine. Thank you so much, Dr. Rini, for your time and effort for this interview with us. And I wish you all the best for your role and the university ahead.
Truly grateful. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having
you
me.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Yes. Take care, ma'am. Bye.